Good morning, everybody. It's Danny from Deep South Homestead. We're out working on our fencing. Just is 7 o'clock. My number one tip for beginning homesteaders is build good fencing. Don't put up these crappy fences, little pieces of wire stranded around. When you put a fence up, put a fence up. You see, I've got good corner posts in. I've got good brace posts. I got the wire. I've got more big posts in. And I've got woven wire fencing. This is 47-inch high woven wire fencing. Guys, when we get to the other end, we're going to pull it with a tractor. I like my fencing to be tight as a fiddle string. When you do it right. Because even us, when we fix our fences this way, this is our other fence here. It's been here for years now. We had a tree right there fall across it. And it messed it all up. And let me show you something. It stretched the wire, and I had to come back and take a pair of pliers and do these bends in it like this to help pull the tension back in it. And this fence was pulled as tight as a fiddle string, and it's already gotten loose on me already. So it doesn't matter what you do. If you don't pull that fence tight to start with, you're just asking for trouble. We've had our cows already jump the fences. We've had Candy get running in the field one day, got spooked and ran into the fence and tried to jump it and hit it and flipped and landed on the outside of the fence. Y'all saw a video of me trying to get her back in the field and her mama screaming and hollering. If you got animals, you need good fencing. That's all I can say is number one tip to a beginning homesteader. Before you do anything, put up good fencing. I'm glad this one is unrolling in this direction. This, I believe, is the wild blueberry. I don't think this is a huckleberry. See the blueberries on it right here? I left it when I seen it. See them?
It is, yes.
This is a wild blueberry.
Wow, I'm glad we got one here.
I found it growing down in here and I said, I can't run that with a tractor. Push this on out past the end here. I was hoping not to have to cut this, but
We shall see.
we shall see. We'll see. Okay guys, I've been pulling fencing for over 40 years, and one thing I've learned, you ain't got to have all this fancy stuff to pull a fence. All you need is two 2x4s, a drill motor, and some 3-inch deck screws. I prefer the torch ones because they're easier to get in and out. It's a very simple process. There's no need buying all the fancy stuff. We're going to use 2 chains and a tractor and I'll pull this thing and it'll be perfect. I mean, it's always worked perfect for me. And when you're in the field, and you're a homesteader, you don't want to spend a bunch of money on stuff you don't have to. The fence is already going to cost you enough. Because like I said in the beginning, fencing is everything. Go ahead and spend the money for the big old posts and good fencing. They make high tensile fencing. That's the best if you can get it. We spend a good bit of money on fencing, but I'm going to tell you what, in the long run, it is well worth it because you don't have to worry. Once you put this fence up, it's good. Now, where we're putting ours up, yes, we have to run the risk of trees falling on them because like that one up there, the neighbor's tree fell on it, messed the fence up. I cut the tree off the fence, didn't say a word to him, just threw it back over the fence on his side. That's just what neighbors do. You know, I'm not going to try to charge him for his tree falling on my fence. And it's just an act of nature. It's what happens when storms come up. And you got to always keep extra fencing because like if that tree had tore the fence up bad, then I would have had to went in and cut a section out of the fence and wired it all back in and re-pulled it. And I have fence stretchers and all that kind of stuff. That is mandatory. If you're going to have a homestead, get your tools to work with and don't try to skimp on fencing. People go, well, why don't you use pallets? If I use pallets down here in the south where I live at, termites eat them up in 6 weeks. They'll be just powder. Go ahead, do things with treated posts, steel, and concrete. It's worth it, believe me. Rule number 1, on a homestead, keep you a 3/8 chain with you, 10 feet long. 10 to 12 foot is that's the measurements that I give everybody who asks me about my chains I keep. These small chains with a hook on both ends. You always want hooks on your chains. Keep extra hooks stored in your shop because if you don't, these are going to get lost. And you got to keep, this one here has been lost twice already. Just one of them things, it happens. Anytime you hook a chain, always put your hook over the top. Don't hook it under the bottom. If you hook it under the bottom, it'll fall off. Now what you want to do is you want to find this where it's about middle ways. Now this is a bigger chain so that it'll hook over this. I keep a bigger chain because the bigger hook will hook over the steel on my bucket. And when we back up, if we look and see and it's not dead in the center, we'll stop and redo it. Okay, one of the main things I'm doing because this fence is bowed down in a bow like this, see we're pulling downhill, and that's one of the things you run into when you're pulling downhill. Now if I was on level land, this wouldn't happen. What I'm trying to make sure is that this wire right here is not caught up under one of these lips like this here and bowing my fence up, so I'm pulling it away all the way down, and I'm looking, making my knee and pushing in, and it looks like when we put the clips on, it'll go up like this, and it'll all straighten out. You can see how the wire is not lining up with the post right here like it should. That's because right here we're 1 or 2 lengths needed to really been up here. It would have pulled the top just a touch more. I'm okay with that right now because it's not that big of an issue because we're fixing to make a curve and go down a hill and then back up a hill, and it's going to compensate for it. But if you run into that, don't freak out because that's all it is. Matter of fact, what I'm fixing to do, I think, is I'm going to just back up just a little bit more and bring this thing up to right here and nail it off if the fence is not too tight. When you're pulling fencing with a tractor, put it in first gear and low range, and be very careful because tractors are powerful. You can destroy this fence by pulling it too tight and breaking it, so make sure you don't do that. Don't put your bottom strand right in the dirt. Keep it picked up off the ground like an inch or two like that. Believe me, in the future, you'll thank me for that. And you can hammer them in so tight that you cut that wire, so be very careful when you're doing that. And if it's possible, it always helps if you can get that staple in front of one of these. Well, first of all, I like to go every other one. Like this one here, I like to put it right in front of that single wire there. Okay guys, this is what I like to see. See that? That fence is tight. Now before some of y'all even say, oh, you put the fence on the wrong side. If you got animals, the fence is supposed to go on the inside. If that's a perimeter fence around your property and that's what you want to do, that's fine. If you got animals that's that bad, you need to get rid of the animals, okay? One thing, this is a interior paddock fence. One side or the other is going to be on the inside or the outside because there's going to be a paddock over here. So it really isn't important. What we looked at was the way we could roll it down through the woods here. We had an open shot on this side. I always try to keep my fences where I can keep one side that the animals is not on clean, and I let that be my widest side, and I put my fence on that side so that I can walk down the clean side and get to it. And then if you're going to put electric fencing up, I like to have it where there's no fence on the inside so that I got room to put my plastic clips on, hook my wire up and stuff like that. It may not be what the rules are, but it's what I've done for 40 years, and it works for me, guys. It's perfect, and I'm going to continue to do it that way. Just that simple, guys. You ain't got to have all that fancy equipment. I mean, wow. Pushing that freaking wire up there. That hill's steeper than it looks like it is. I know the camera's probably not doing it justice, but I couldn't stand up and push it because it kept rolling back on me, so I had to actually get on my hands and knees and push it up the hill.
Think you're gonna make it.
Huh?
You're gonna make it. One roll.
Well, I didn't cut them.
It made it.
It made it.
Look at Nosy.
Nosy, what are you doing, huh, boy? Yeah, I know. Okay. Okay guys, we've got the fence pulled up now. We've got a little clipping left to do, but this is why I wanted to let the cows in here. We've got all this green grass in here, just like this deep, and they need to eat it down because it's winter rye. It will eventually die here in the next few weeks, and I'd rather see the cows get the benefit from it before it actually dies down. Just remember, number one tip for beginning homesteaders, good fencing. Even if it's where you have to spend your money up front, get the fencing before you get the animals, because that's so important. And don't skimp on fencing. Don't buy this little 2x4 weld wire, dog wire stuff. Go ahead and buy the high tensile field fencing. And guys, pull it and pull it tight. Set your corner post right. Don't buy these dinky little old posts. Go ahead and buy you an 8 or 10 inch posts and set these corner posts in. And if you can afford it, set them in concrete. If you're going to tamp them in, then tamp them in and let it rain on them good before you ever pull a wire on them. Mine, I watered mine in because we ain't got any rain forecast for 10 days. And so I just went ahead and took a 5-gallon bucket and just watered mine in good and let them set for a day or two. And then guys, tip number 2 for beginning homesteaders is, if your animals keep tearing your fences and they keep messing with your fences, get rid of the animal. You don't want fence jumpers, and you don't want animals that's constantly tearing up. I've already had to put the black one back in my field once. She's jumped the fence. She's constantly pushing on my fences. I've got to get rid of her just as soon as I get the opportunity. So whenever it happens, guys, don't give that animal to somebody else as a homesteader. That animal needs to be butchered. And we would butcher her now, but we just put a whole cow in the freezer, so we can't do that. So we're gonna have to wait, probably this fall or something like that. We might consider doing it. And plus, we don't know if she's pregnant. If she's pregnant, then we'll wait and let her have a calf, and we'll take care of it later. But right now, I got to get this fencing done because I'm gonna turn these cows in here to this winter rye and let them be enjoying it. So, guys, before I do that, I'm gonna take you down here and I'm gonna show you what happens when you pull a fence up and down hills and across hollers. Okay guys, one thing we've learned here at Deep South Homestead, and y'all seen our videos, you saw last year where the water tore our fencing down. So with woven wire fencing, there's rules that we've learned. When you got barbed wire, it's no big deal. But when you got woven wire fencing and you're pulling through hollers, see how high this fence gets up here? Because you're going up a hill. You pull that fence down, don't put it all the way to the ground. Leave it where water can come under it and clip it where the water and debris can get under it. Now, if you got an animal that's trying to go under a fence, remember, get rid of the animal. Okay guys, remember, tip number 1, good fencing for new homesteaders or old homesteaders. Good fencing. If you're buying a new place, spend the money on the fencing. Good fencing. Good fences make good neighbors. That's number 1. Number 2, if you got an animal that keeps tearing your fences up, get rid of him. I don't care how good a pet he is, get rid of him. Tip number 2. Thank you guys from Deep South Homestead. let her go.
Come on.
Come on. Come on here, Daisy. Come on. Come on, girl. Come on. Come on. Come on. Let's go. Come on. Where's the baby girl? Come on. Come on. Where's the baby girl? Come on. Come on, Neeny Neeny. Come on. Let's go. Come on. You're too close for you to be going crazy on me now. Go there to mama. That's a good Neeny Neeny. Yeah, that's a good Neeny Neeny.